Good afternoon, and welcome to the July 24th, 2019 Urban Design Commission meeting. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Lee Peoples, Anthony Black,
Present.
Jorge Charnico,
Here.
Matt Guillory,
Here.
Tyler Holmes,
Here.
Sarah Miller, Toon Nguyen,
Here.
Marcus Uday, James Barnum. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Minutes are in your packet. And if there are no comments on the minutes, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Oh, yeah. Okay, next item on the agenda is cases withdrawn, and there are none. Item 4 is continuance requests, and there are none. Item 5 is a consent docket, and there are no items. So item 6 is cases for individual consideration, and item A is UDC 19-00010, several addresses on Northwest 6th Street. I believe Lisa, is the applicant present?
Yes, this is an application to install synthetic turf in the street right-of-way at the northeast corner of 6th and Francis. In the staff report, we laid out several potential pros and cons with synthetic grass. Synthetic grass in the right-of-way has not been submitted for approval or approved in any of the design districts before this case, except for one project at the 21C Museum that was a year or two ago. They installed synthetic turf. Downtown Design Review believed it was not appropriate, and it was not. And so it was, the request to install it was denied. So this is only the second request that any of the design review committees have heard. Some of the main concerns from staff's perspective are that, so the downtown guidelines do not specify what types of material can or cannot be used in the tree wells or streetscapes. But it does talk about landscape treatments, and there's a companion guideline book called Trees and Plants of Oklahoma City, and everything in there is a natural element. So from that perspective, there's not very much guidance. Synthetic grass, obviously the reason people want to use it is because you don't have to mow it, you don't have to keep it weed-free, it reduces pesticides, it reduces water, all these things that are to the benefit of the environment. But then there may also be some negatives. My main concern is that it would set a precedent, because if we approve it here, are we going to approve it everywhere in the Cottage District, everywhere in the rest of downtown, midtown? There are several different types of synthetic turf products. The applicant is proposing a specific product. In the staff report, we reference some other products in other municipalities. We don't know that those are the same. Like, we have an example from South Ogden, Utah, where in one of that city had assessed its advantages and disadvantages. I just want to clarify, we don't know that that's the same product that this applicant is proposing. So we don't know that they apply to this. But things like toxicity, water runoff, bacterial breeding ground. I hear and read conflicting reports about the extent to which the soil heats up. I also want to make clear this example from South Ogden, even though the Planning Commission or the Design Review Committee there recommended against it, it was ultimately approved by City Council. So with that, again, if the applicant's goal is to save water and reduce maintenance, staff believes there are lots of other ways to do that, involving natural materials, specifically stone and wildflowers and native grasses. So with that.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. I'm here today on behalf of the developer, which is Caleb Baker, who's also here. I want to touch on a little bit what staff said. So when you read the staff report, it appears to me that all of the concerns that they cite come from one specific study that comes from South Ogden, Utah. As Lisa stated, ultimately there the City Council did ultimately approve an ordinance that allows this. And when you look nationally, what you're seeing is there are legislatures that are enacting legislation that prohibit municipalities from stopping the use of this product meaning synthetic turf, because it does have a lot of advantages. You know, it reduces water usage, obviously. It allows for pesticides to not occur. And I want to briefly go through all of the concerns raised from that South Ogden study that staff placed into your staff report, and certainly toxicity is at the top of the list when it comes to concerns from these types of products. So with that, I do want to hand out a couple of materials that staff is also in possession of. This is a cut sheet of this product, as well as a certification that it's lead-free. So when you read the South Ogden study, as it relates to toxicity, the concern is presence of lead and zinc. This product is free of those. It is a lead-free, certified green product. So the second bullet point is toxic runoff. Certainly you don't have toxic runoff because there are no toxins within this product. One of the concerns always with this product in the past has been the use of ground-up tires as a base. Again, in this product, it's a silica-coated sand, so there isn't ground-up rubber. When you think of ground-up rubber, if you watch like football, a lot of times you'll see the ground-up rubber pellets get brought up under players' feet. That is not what we have here. So we don't have that. It's that sand base. One of the things that I find a bit ironic about staff's analysis is when you think of the sub-base of this product, it's different layers of gravel to allow drainage, and then the aesthetically pleasing product on top. And so reading staff's analysis, the sub-base would be an approvable material, but not the aesthetically pleasing piece on top that is meant to mirror real grass. I also included in there's right-of-way along Western. If you've driven that recently, those little bump outs that are south of 50th, north of 36th, that they did as part of that Western Avenue streetscape, within those bump outs, recently this product, synthetic turf, was installed in those. So then additionally, the concern about the surface temperature, I handed out a picture that's actually from my backyard. As a father, I realize that I don't have any pictures on my phone that don't also include my children, so I apologize. My child and her dog are in here, but we have a big piece of this in our backyard. We have never experienced any problems as it relates to surface temperature. It's actually the opposite. We found it to be much more pleasant than the balance of the backyard. In terms of drainage, it drains better than the balance of the backyard. When a heavy rain comes, which we've experienced a lot this year, it is drier faster than the rest of the yard. So any of the concerns raised in these studies, we just simply have not experienced that in our house. One of the earlier staff reports mentioned a concern, perhaps it came from a neighbor, I'm not sure, about how it stays green year-round and therefore it doesn't look natural. I find that a bit strange. I live in a neighborhood that has a lot of significant old trees, and so as such you have lots and lots of yards with fescue, and fescue stays green year-round. So I find that argument a bit misplaced. So what we're seeking to do is to gain approval for a product that is gaining a lot of popularity for various reasons nationwide. I had my intern in my office do a quick research, and she found at least 35 or 40 municipalities, just in about a 20-minute search, that have started enacting ordinances specifically to allow these products because of all of the benefits, because the products have moved away from all of the negatives that were found in South Ogden and other places in various studies. So you just don't have those problems like you used to with synthetic turf. It's been engineered to a point to where it looks very natural and has a lot of benefits environmentally. So with that, we would ask for your approval. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
What's the square footage that would be covered by the turf?
So it's, could you go back to that image? It's along the frontage along 6th Street. I don't have the exact square footage. Okay, with you. I don't have that, I apologize. But it's along that frontage and then along the side up the Francis right-of-way.
What are the maintenance, what type of maintenance is required for the product as far as debris, or if someone is using this when they're walking a dog? What's the maintenance?
Yeah, so that was a concern I had when we installed in my backyard, because I knew that I would be suckered into getting a dog at some point. And that day happened. And so it's no different than grass. The way that the layers happen, it drains down. Obviously, the hard stuff you simply pick up like you would normal grass. And so in terms of maintenance, the joke I say is instead of a mower, I have a blower, right? Like, so when leaves and things fall on it, I simply get a blower and blow it rather than having to use a mower to cut the grass.
So for when this type of product is used on an athletic surface, it's got a longer thread, it's got a matrix of material that's put into it. Sometimes that matrix is synthetic. This is all natural sub-base.
Correct.
What is is there any point in time in which something needs to be added, it needs to be raked, it needs to be brought up back to, is there any kind of puckering or seams or something like that would need maintenance over time?
No.
How long has the product been installed in your yard?
3 years.
Okay.
And it gets heavy use. I mean, it is the area where all of the games, my son uses golf clubs on it, and we've seen and he swings hard.
Got a question. On a city level, like say you have natural grasses, grass grows above 12 inches, you can report it to the city. Say on, this is if anyone up here knows, like legally, like say if this heals up and like half of it goes bad and you have an issue there, is there a reporting system to how this looks and appears?
I believe the standard property maintenance rules would apply.
Okay. So in this case, though, if it was under 12 inches, all of that, it could pretty much be turned brown in areas. I'm just curious. It's really complicated reporting even high grass sometimes. So I'm just, in this instance, is there even any maintenance?
But I'm not sure you can call in dead grass.
Yeah, your neighbor could have a dead yard. And
okay. No, I just am curious if, like, I could see this, potentially turn a direction where it can look kind of grungy, and it's not like grass per se, but basically I'm asking a question that I don't know if there is an answer. Like, if this begins to look bad, I don't think there's really anything you could do to make it look better.
well, the product itself is this color. It's my understanding it's not like dyed or colored. The product is this color. So, I mean, perhaps there might be some slight level of fading, but I don't think what you see when a yard goes bad is significantly more drastic than what could possibly happen here.
For sure. I was asking about taking a stance on it. Just,
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Sure, well, I think an analogy to that is one reason the design review guidelines are written around durable, high-quality materials is because after the point of approval, there's no control over fading. You know, there is like property maintenance control over excessive deterioration and loose boards, but in terms of how the material lasts over time, you are affirming that at the time you approve it.
Okay. Gotcha.
If there aren't any other questions from the commission, is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak to this?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Bill Bleakley. I reside at 607 Northwest 7th and appearing as president of the South of St. Anthony Neighborhood Association. I think you have in your packet the resolution adopted by the board in opposition to this project. I think first I'd like to address maintenance. I apologize. My wife and I were driving down 6th Street about a month ago and noticed that this artificial turf that's already installed had approximately 6 inches of either weeds or grass growing in it, and we intended to take a picture of it to show you what happens to this type of installation when it's not maintained. Weeds can appear in this. There are other installations in the area that are on private property that have developed a lot of weeds, and if there is not proper maintenance, this material can go south. It's also subject to other foreign materials getting embedded in it, and I think if you've driven around the corner on this project, you will notice on the red side, or the west side of the project, the astroturf looks rather red, and that's because the red earth from their project from behind has been washing down and filling in the astroturf, which also creates the opportunity for weed seed to germinate. So if you have weeds growing in your astroturf, are you going to get out there and pick them out one, or are you going to spray weed killer on your astroturf? So there are a lot of environmental issues that might arise over this allegedly pristine project. The important thing to note that this is the city right-of-way and not private property. There is use of astroturf in all kinds of situations, including Mr. Box's backyard, that are on private property and is theirs to deal with. But this is public right-of-way. There needs to be some standards set in this regard. There are obligations of the homeowners to maintain that. It's not the city's responsibility. In addition, as far as our neighborhood is concerned, this project has always had a counter-intuitive situation to the rest of the neighborhood. This project was built on the property line. With the exception of the trees you see there, there is no landscaping in the right-of-way other than the astroturf that's installed. Do you remember the developer that last appeared to you for the project on 8th Street was interested in maintaining the neighborhood setback and is planning to do some good landscaping? This is, I think, a predominantly residential area, and I think that should be taken in consideration. But it's also, I think, a terrible precedent to open up. If you do this for Cottage District, then all the other design areas under your jurisdiction will have an opportunity to come before you with the same application. The downtown design folks don't think it's appropriate, and we urge you to deny this application. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak to it?
If I may briefly, I'm glad Mr. Bleakley brought it up, because this project has been a long process for my client. Mr. Bleakley, on behalf of these neighbors, have fought my client every step of the way. At a certain point, it appears that somebody's just fighting to fight. We've been to the district court, I think, twice, and at a certain point, it's just clear that they're just trying their best to stall everything my client is doing on this. I'm not sure. I think it was Mr. Bleakley's letter that referenced the concern with it looking green, and therefore it doesn't look natural. So I'm not sure that he put anything into the record that warrants a response, other than just to say, I know a lot of people weren't here when we came around the first time, so I thought it worth mentioning that the neighborhood has passed a resolution every single time this project has come before it here, has come before council, has come before planning commission.
So isn't there a different way of potentially looking at that? I mean, you're saying that the fact that the neighborhood has opposed this at a number of different points is some sort of evidence that the neighborhood is, just opposed to this project and trying to be obstructionist towards the project. The flip side of that, though, from my point of view, is that if you know the neighborhood has issues with the project that are ongoing and larger in scope, this doesn't seem to be a fight that's necessary.
Well, so to that point, my client, Kayla, she actually lives in the neighborhood. And so it's kind of been an uncomfortable fight all these years. She lives in the neighborhood. She's going to move into this project when it's done. We have tried to communicate throughout the years on this. They've had attorneys at points. They haven't, so it's been difficult. In all honesty, they didn't know, and their installer didn't know, that a landscaping treatment required a permit and required a CA. It was an honest mistake here. I mean, obviously, we knew everything else needed a CA because we've been at this podium for far too many times throughout the years. It was an honest mistake here, not knowing that the landscaping treatment needed a CA. But in terms of trying to stop it and work with the neighbors, it is my opinion, based upon my experience with Mr. Bleakley and the neighborhood over the course of years, we would just be talking to talk. We did have several meetings several years ago about the project, trying to find a way. Some of the issues dealt with height. They didn't like the fact that we were blocking views. We have no height restrictions. We have no air rights in Oklahoma. There were just simply fundamental issues that the neighborhood was never going to be able to get past. And so, although I appreciate your comments and perhaps a conversation might have helped, we really didn't know that, frankly, a conversation needed to happen because we didn't know a CA was required for this.
Why is a CA required for this?
The CA is required for all public and private improvements to the curb.
Okay. So, curious though, if you were to plant like Bermuda instead of fescue in a yard, would you have to get a CA?
No, their original approval specified some sort of actual turf grass. So the original CA said what they were, hold on, let me see, maiden grass was what was noted in their original approval.
Okay.
But yes, if you're doing different varietals of maiden grass, no. Different varieties of grass, no. But grass versus shrubs versus trees, yes.
So yeah, when I say shrubs versus trees, yes, but this is grass, not shrubs or trees. I'm just being devil's advocate right now. Like, I don't understand.
Well, the commission could find that synthetic turf is equivalent to natural grass, and
Yeah. Well,
that's how we would accept it.
reading through the staff report, it sounds like there's an approach to it that isn't mandated by the city, that the city, though, is trying to mandate this, when it's like, I don't know if I don't see where they needed a CA to do different type of grass. Just hearing it out loud.
Well, I agree that they don't need a CA to do a different type of grass. I disagree that synthetic turf is just a different type of grass. I believe it's a completely different material.
If you were to do decomposed granite, would you need to get a CA for it?
If you had originally specified turf grass, yes.
Okay, all right.
What if we hadn't specified? I mean, that's the thing that I can't wrap my head around
We
is...
would have asked you to.
Okay. Because to your point, decomposed granite is what the subbase is, right? It's just the green stuff is the pretty stuff on top. And so the subbase, in which there's in fact an entire yard in Sosa that is gravel, is appropriate. But yet the aesthetic stuff on top is not.
So I'll just chime in and say that I've used this on a project. I used it 10 years ago, and there are no weeds. It's still intact. It's not this exact product, but it's similar to it. I think when people talk about it as AstroTurf, they think of what my parents might have had in our yard in 1970 versus this product, which oftentimes looks pretty real. So I'm kind of leaning toward what Tyler's saying. Ground cover's ground cover. If you want to exclude this, it should probably be excluded. But I don't know in reading what I have in front of me that it's explicitly excluded.
I think some of the issues that we're getting into are the issue of, one, precedent and how it's been treated in the past, which is very limited. But how it was treated in the past was not the level of detail that's been brought forward here with respect to the green nature of this particular product. So one of the things that would have to be made explicitly clear is that if a decision was made with respect to this, it would be contingent upon the proprieties or the properties of the product that was being reviewed, so that precedent was not set for just synthetic turf. Because if, to your point, in the event that we had a decomposed granite base and then you decided, and then an owner came forward and said, I want to put something on top of that was wholly inappropriate and toxic, it would immediately and obviously be rejected. We're talking about something here that is a product that you're defending the non-toxic properties of it, which we would not want to set as precedent for future potential applicants. I'm not a huge fan of synthetic turf in the right-of-way. You made an excellent case. But I think that the issue here is with respect to what we are reviewing, we're reviewing the performance characteristics of the product as much as whether or not synthetic turf can be used in this application.
Sure.
Okay, but is that our mandate? Because we're not given chemical compositions to follow. We're given aesthetic guidance. They talk about ground cover, but there's not anything that says that the chemical composition has to be X, Y, or Z, or that when you're spraying your yard to keep it green as long as possible, that you're not putting in more toxins into the environment.
But it does state durable, and it does talk about the quality of the material that's installed. So there would be some types of natural vegetation that would be inappropriate in the right-of-way because of their durability or their the quality of their material. I think that what we're looking at here is the higher quality material within this realm of product. And therefore, if it's being considered, it needs to be considered based on its performance, not on what its material is, because we don't want to set precedent that somebody can come back later and say, well, synthetic turf is synthetic turf, and therefore I should be allowed, based on precedents, to install a much less expensive, much less durable product in a situation of a similar nature.
I think that's a great point. I think there's a way to address it through a decision. You could have specific findings based upon the uniqueness of the product, the certifications that have been put forward, et cetera, to avoid what your concern is. I see Lisa shaking her head, so I assume that means you agree with that.
I just don't know that that's what this body's here. We're not here to set precedents.
Yeah,
You're talking about
you're
specific-
evaluating a specific proposal of a specific product for a specific location.
Yes.
If it's possible, I agree with both of y'all. I mean, I do agree that I couldn't tell you the first thing about the chemical composition of any of this, and I'm not qualified to talk to that. But at the same time, if the city's going to allow, artificial turf to be used on a wide-scale basis, which this might, we might be going in that direction, there should be something that stipulates some sort of quality control of what can be used and what can't be used, because there, I'm sure, are any different variety of healthy and unhealthy options out there in terms of artificial turf. That being said, can I ask a question of staff, I guess, of is there a definition that we use internally for maiden grass that is, my understanding of when I hear the term maiden grass is more of a bush than fescue. I mean, yeah, it's not a turf, it's more of landscaping than a lawn. So my issue with this is, quite frankly, what I thought we were approving, and I was around through all of the height arguments and things like that, but what I thought we were approving in terms of landscaping here was something that would be more interesting than what we're seeing here. I mean, so do we have a definition of maiden grass?
I don't have the trees and plants for Oklahoma City in my book. I believe it's defined in there in terms of exactly what that is. What was your other question? Oh, you thought the original approval wasn't just lawn.
Right. I mean,
but had texture.
Exactly. If maiden grass, and I just looked it up real quickly.
Maiden grass is what was noted on the original approval.
And I just looked it up in my phone. The definition of maiden grass says it gets up to 8 feet tall, and it looks more like a bush, which is more visually interesting. Going back to the point that we're here as a design review committee, what I was anticipating when we originally approved this was something more visually interesting than just flat lawn.
But on that point, though, I don't think you can disprove an application based on blandness of your lawn. Like if you just put fescue or Bermuda, you're like, well, I think it could be more colorful. And that's me just...
No, I'm not talking about fescue versus Bermuda. I'm talking about actual landscaping versus turf. And if we were talking about, a drought-resistant garden planting that had some bushes and things like that were grasses but were substantial...
I can agree with that, but the fact that they may have scaled back and made it more simple, I personally don't see aesthetically a reason to disprove this because of how this looks, for instance. I truthfully wouldn't want my neighbor surfing their entire yard, but I also wouldn't want them putting stones out in their entire yard. And at 7th and Francis, there's a yard with stones all across the side, which it's like, I don't know, there's like this thing where I think this is impeding on what we are able to do as a commission. I think this is a bigger city issue, because if the city doesn't have any rules on this, there's no rules. So we can maybe make rules, but it's green lawn to mimic grass.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to with, I mean, I agree with Jorge. If we're going to get into, if as a city we're going to get into health implications of this and toxicity, then, and I do think we should, I think that there should be guidelines for that. We're not the body to do that.
Yep. One thing to add also on, like, toxicity of stuff, my dog can't walk in the yard 2 hours after I put fertilizer in it, and you do that 2 or 3 times a year. My child can't go out in the yard. If my dog goes and eats something in fertilizer, it could kill my dog. The things we already put in our yard are toxic. Roundup is like cancer effects. That's like on a global, like a nationwide lawsuit right now. I just think in toxicity, I don't think it lies in turf. And this is kind of where I stand on this, just because I don't love it. I just think it's a bigger issue that I don't want to solve as a commission. I think we should push the city to say, hey, you tell us what we need to do. So,
If I could, my client reminded me, one of the things about this project, Paul, if you go down real quick, there are planters right on the other side of that turf. That's where it was always, we showed, more verticality in the planting. So there is if you could scroll then down, those two images up top. There are planters. So you've got the sidewalk, the turf, then those are planters lining those little step-ups. Right. So that's where additional plantings will be.
I think the maintenance concerns that have been raised are relevant whether it's grass or whether it's AstroTurf, because I had a neighbor with Bermuda, and they didn't mow it, they didn't water it, it was yellow. I think there's some care that has to go to anything that you put down. I don't think one solves the other problem. So to me, it's kind of a moot point. And I go back to, I don't see anything here that prohibits them from using it. I think if the city has an objection to using it, then I think it ought to be explicit in the guidelines. I keep going back to not limited to in one of these paragraphs, and when you do that, you kind of open the door. And if that door doesn't want to get opened, we should probably close it.
And I tend to agree with you. One of my neighbors put in turf, I don't know if it's this brand or what, through his whole front yard. And several of the neighbors are up in arms about it. It really doesn't make that much of a difference to me. Interestingly enough, the yard crew still shows up once a week, so I'm not quite sure what that's about. But maybe there is some sort of maintenance that's really required on a semi-regular basis.
Yes, my name is Kevin Thurman. I live at 924 North Chartel. I drive down Northwest 6th Street every day when I go to work, and the day I came around the corner and saw this turf installed, I thought it was just like showcasing for the houses, not something that was going to be permanent. I don't know how long it's been there. How long's it been down? 6 months? 6 months maybe it's been down. And just like Mr. Bleakley said, weeds were already germinating and growing in that. And so my question to Mr. Box is did you use Roundup to kill the weeds that were in there?
I've had one mushroom and one weed grow up in mine, and I went and picked it. So, I mean, there are far less, if there are weeds, they're easily disposed of, and my understanding is, no, we didn't use any Roundup. I mean, when they install this, it's dug down a pretty good distance. There's several different layers of different types of rock material that go in it to create that drainage way. It's the same company that did my yard, and so it's several, I don't know if it's feet, but several layers of different type of rock material before they get on that. And there's a sub-base that's meant to prevent, those things from growing up.
If it was not Roundup that was used, it was another toxic chemical, correct?
I don't know what you're asking.
I'm asking, did you spray weed killer on the turf to kill the weeds?
No, I did not spray weed killer.
Did your client spray weed killer on the turf to kill the weeds? Somebody sprayed weed killer on the turf to kill the weeds, right?
I was out there pulling some, if that's what you're referring to.
Oh, okay. That's totally different then. Thank you for your time.
Hi. My name is Randy Smith, and I'm an owner in the project in question. I think we're getting a little bit lost in the minutia of what somebody likes versus what somebody doesn't like. I mean, I'm actually sick of crushed granite everywhere, seriously. But in the end, I think that the question is, this is lower maintenance. We're always in Oklahoma very concerned about water, which again, we can do crushed granite. But I think in the end, overall, this project is something that looks good. I mean, in some places that this artificial turf may or may not kind of go. I used to have an old home in Mesa Park. It wouldn't look good there. And again, I know this commission's worried about setting precedent, but, you guys seem like very capable people of determining on a case-by-case basis whether this works or whether this doesn't work. And I think in this case, frankly, it does work. And I would ask the commission to make an exception and approve this. Thank you.
Can I chime in real fast? Well, listening to everyone's story, I have a concern is, okay, so if we don't have established guidelines in setting the precedents, we approve this, there's going to be tons more cases where there's no established guidelines for us, then we're going to have to go through the same procedures and things. Would there be any kind of, proposals or guidelines to where we can suggest that there should be established guidelines set for certain types of material to be set ground in definitions?
Sure, yeah, staff, obviously, we can do research about, to set some parameters for what the turf should be. It will take some time. We can't do it immediately. But I also want to just real quickly clarify, various people have said, well, the city doesn't have guidelines about this. And we do. The downtown guidelines say that tree wells, which are in the amenity zone strip here, should be covered with a grate, brick, or stone, or landscape treatments. The commission is empowered, I believe, to interpret landscape treatments as being, as this synthetic grass product could fulfill that. So I just don't want the commission to say it is not going to have purview over what gets installed in the right-of-way, because we have sidewalk guidelines, and we have landscape guidelines, we have street tree guidelines that also apply.
I was going to address something of the nature of what Ms. Chronister was talking about. I often hear in these hearings, there's nothing to prohibit it, so therefore we can do it. It's a favorite line of many applicants. But this is a design district, and you are the Urban Design Commission, and it seems to me part of your function is to make subjective decisions on what's the appropriate design for the environment or the setting or the design district that's in question. So I would argue that this is a subjective decision on your part as to whether within the environment of the cottage district putting AstroTurf on a right-of-way is an appropriate treatment. Thank you.
If we don't have any other questions or comments, does anybody want to try and draft a motion?
Personally, I understand why this is tough, and I understand the precedents and all that, but I think the entire purpose of this material is the landscape material used for landscape reasons. There's fields done in it. There's play areas done in it. It's used as a landscape material, and in this, it's a landscape treatment. And while precedence is one thing, I think ineffective or poor landscape can be done anywhere. I think someone can plant the wrong tree and you won't like it. They can plant the tree in a wrong place, you won't like it. You may like junipers versus, live oaks or this. And I just don't think it's in our realm to decide what type of landscaping someone can put in their yard when it's not outlined by the city. And so while you may dislike this, but I don't like how some homes look, but you can design your home the way you want it to look. You can design your yard the way you want it to look if it's within city code. And I don't see anything within city code restricting this. And if the city does want to take a stance on it, that would be fantastic. It would make it more clear for us. But at this point, it's permeable surface that actually infiltrates the ground. I mean, you could pave this in all stone, and it's less permeable and worse for the environment, and the runoff goes into the drains. But this actually has benefits versus asphalt, that you can do a parking lot as big as you want in this city, and no one will ever mandate it. But the city code is the city code. If you don't like it, we all have to combat this. Is in my neighborhood with my own neighbors, but I think everyone here has issues with a different neighbor, the bad one on the block or something. But this is just my opinion, and I understand, and I apologize if people disagree, but this is my stance.
I do think it's a unique,
Let me just.
I think that this is a very unique case that's being discussed with respect to the material that's being presented. And I also think it's unique because of the cottage district and the aesthetics within the cottage district. Maybe that's a reason for or against the product itself, and that can be, and if you're going to make a motion, that can be weighed. But I do think the motion needs to respond to the material that's being proposed.
You're speaking to the quality of the material or the specific manufacturer?
Quality, performance quality.
I think that's where this gets really tough, because how do you define it?
Yeah, the question is what criteria is saying that it is,
Yeah, if
that's
there
making it the quality? Is it the lead-free aspect? Is it the sub-base aspect? Is it the...
If there was an ASTM standard we could reference, I think it would be much easier.
You could specify that it is this product, the synthetic grass 360. It's already in. Well, one, it's already in. Two, there would be no way that I could verify if this is what is installed.
So then with respect to precedent, you'd be stating that the only thing that we've approved as a body is that specific product.
Yes. But that still may not mean it's appropriate for all locations, in my opinion.
Do you want to put forth a motion?
Yeah, I'll do approve the application on the basis that the project does comply with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section D of the staff report.
Are you referencing the specific product?
I personally don't know if
That's fair.
I would even have
We
a
have
preference on
we
that.
have a motion.
So can we, I'm not king of Robert's Rules of Order. I have a suggestion to his motion.
You can, if you don't get a second, then that motion dies, and then you can make another motion and make a different recommendation.
So I would say that it meets the intent of the guidelines. I don't think it meets the guidelines. I think it meets the intent of the guidelines.
Make a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the intent with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section D of the staff report.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
I'm opposed.
I'm opposed.
So how many ayes did we have? 2? 3? 3 to 3.
So in order, we're missing multiple people. Could I ask that we rescind so we could come back in a month rather than spending a bunch more money to go up and appeal it to the Board of Adjustment since it's 3-3?
I think it just automatically be continued because you don't have a,
And that's
Vote
fine
one way or the
too.
other.
I'm not sure that's how the bylaws read, but I'm fine with that too.
Well, you're saying we can just automatically continue it?
yeah, because it did not receive a
Because it
vote
did not.
one way or the other. It was not approved or denied.
Okay.
Okay, are you good to go to,
You can make a motion to continue if you,
no, I was just going to check
Yep.
the date before we all agree on something. To August 21st? No. I'm sorry. Or 28th, August 28th.
Wednesday, the 28th? Kayla? That works.
if you want to do a motion, somebody can do a
For
motion.
those who are opposed, is there any additional facts or materials that you want to see, or is it just the product itself is problematic? Because we can bring people, one of the reasons it was continued today was the expert on it was going to be here. He had a late-minute emergency that didn't allow him to be here. But if there's some additional facts and information we could provide to staff that you'd have in your report in advance, I'd be happy to do that.
Is there any way we can provide similar materials that were suggested by staff, like STC versus this material that you provided here? Is it comparable, very exact same?
These are
Oh,
these are the same.
oh, they are the same. But whatever the material that was installed, is there any way we can provide?
So I've got the cut sheet and all of,
The cut sheets are what was installed.
Oh, okay.
right.
they're
So
all-
what you have is the specifics on this installed material.
Installed material. Okay. And then also I would like to suggest, like, if we could have, like, a suggestion for established guidelines as far as, if we come across this again, which I'm pretty sure we'll come across this again in the near future, pretty near future.
I think, it's sweeping the country. Like I said, you're seeing legislatures taking action to stop cities from blocking it.
But I'd like to see more, because I don't think that as a body we have that permeable to be able to make that decision and this.
And I'll work with staff. I'll get staff additional materials as well.
If in your working with staff, there could be a way to develop to where this is not open-ended into the future. And that was, you asked those who said no. Personally, case by case and product by product, that can be reviewed, but I don't think it could be open-ended for future requests. So that's the difficulty that I have.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I want to go back to a comment you made earlier to establish a benchmark. I'm looking at this certificate, and there's a reference to laboratory tests determined content of lead or other hazardous material was scrutinized and no detectable traces. Perhaps that becomes part of, if the toxic component of this is an issue, that might be something that we could use next time in order to narrow in on a certain benchmark.
Yeah, and that was my suggestion. The motion could even reflect that it has to meet the criteria that you just mentioned in that cut sheet.
David, it might be helpful if there are other installations in the city that have been installed for longer, that might be helpful.
Okay. You can all come to my backyard if you want to see that.
But
Yeah.
not all at the same time.
That's right. 4 at a time.
Okay,
Can I get a motion to continue?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is UDCA 19-00018 at 15 Southwest 25th Street in Capitol Hill. Is the applicant present?
He's present here. Give me 1 second, and I will introduce. Okay, this is a project in Capitol Hill. Several years ago, the committee heard another project on this site. It's for so there's, if you've driven by, it's on the north side of Southwest 25th Street. There's a complex of manufacturing buildings. All are similar setbacks, similar materials. The problem with their similar materials is that metal siding is not permitted. So some of the buildings were constructed prior to the design district establishment. Others were installed later, but received a variance from the prohibition against metal siding. It does, since this development reads as a campus, it makes sense that they would be installed with the same materials, even though it's not allowed. Staff is supportive of the variance to the metal siding because, one, it would match the rest of the campus. Well, maybe that's really the only reason. But as part of that, we've suggested that a brick wainscot be added to two sides of the building. As presented, the applicant is proposing a brick facade on the south side of the building.
Yeah.
And staff is suggesting instead of one all brick facade, we would rather see the brick distributed around two sides of the building because it does have two street-facing facades.
Yes, Santa Fe Avenue and 25th Street, both of them. Santa Fe and 25th.
Right.
So, yeah.
So with that design change, staff supports the project and staff supports the variance. But that's our opinion.
Do we have any questions for staff?
So what's proposed right now is full brick facade on the south or half on two sides?
Full brick on the south is what's shown on the drawing.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought. I just
Yeah,
wanted
but I believe we had, who is your partner, your other owner who couldn't be here?
Oh, Ray? Yeah.
Ray.
Yeah.
I think Ray did he mention it to you? I think he was agreeable to that.
Yeah. We have the building, the pre-engineered metal building package on site for the last month. We're trying to get the permit passed through so we can get it done before wintertime. So.
Do you have anything to present with respect to this project?
Pardon me?
Do you have anything that you want to state with respect to the project?
No, it's all he's doing. Right now he contacted us to build this building. What he has now is two connexes which he's storing metal in, and all this building is going to be doing is just eliminating those connexes and beautifying the neighborhood, so to speak, by getting rid of those and putting up a building. So.
Do we have any questions for the applicant?
On the east side that'll be facing Santa Fe, is there going to be fencing? So between the building and Santa Fe, I assume there'll be a fence?
No.
No fence?
There's another lot there. It's not right adjacent to it, so there's another lot that buffers that. So that's why it's sitting quite a ways away from Santa Fe, because that'd be in closer proximity for him to use for his manufacturing plant.
So there can or will be at some point another building?
Could be, yes.
Between you and Santa Fe?
If he desired to in the future. Yes.
I'm sorry. From the drawings, it looked like it was the corner lot. I must be misreading something.
I'm only seeing 11.7 feet to the property line. The new building is...
Pardon me?
The new building is only less than 12 feet to the property line? It seems to be on the last...
Yeah, I think that's not technically a whole separate lot. It's just a really wide right-of-way off of Shields or Santa Fe. I think that's what you're...
33 feet of right-of-way, plus it's almost 50 feet.
Oh, okay.
So nothing could be built.
This is the last buildable lot, but there will be...
But there's a lot
almost
of
45
space.
feet. Yes. Okay, I understand now. Thank you.
And as proposed, a fence is not proposed as part of the application.
Would anything be required as a part of the application?
You're not required to have a fence.
Okay.
If they come in to put in a fence, they'll need a CA to do it.
Do we have any other questions for the applicant? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I mean, being in the area that it's in, it's context-wise, the building next to it is offset similar to this. The ones further down the line are actually setting a little bit closer to the curb or the setbacks, I think, from what I can see. And then I think the building next to it has some windows on it. Is there any intent, well, would there be any, would you be interested in putting any windows on this building at all?
Basically, probably not. I think his intent is to store materials in there and keep it safeguarded like he was in the connexes. And if you introduce windows and another door besides the two roll-up doors, or on that side, on the west side, then it'd be an opportunity for someone to break in there. He's just trying to, it's just a storage facility is all it is to him. No electric, no plumbing, no anything in there.
Yeah. I actually, so thinking with the layout of the site, having a storage building probably right off 25th Street, I would almost prefer it to butting the alleyway. So to shift it, turn it on the site, and then have it back there, because long-term it's going to be a storage building with no windows in Capitol Hill, which I don't think fits the vernacular of the area. Just an observation.
Are you opposed with what staff has proposed? The
No,
windows code?
no. When we presented this, when they're looking at the plans, they're going to make us put a fire hydrant across the street on the southeast corner of the intersection of Santa Fe and 25th, because there wasn't a hydrant within 400 feet to the fire department, so we're going to do that. So it's an additional $18,000 he's going to have to pay. He's not a very wealthy man, I wouldn't think. At some point, his pocket's going to run dry, so it's just we're trying to get him out as quick or cheap as we can get it out. So
I would make the case, from my point of view, I would prefer a full brick facade on the south than a half and half on the south and the east, especially if you take into consideration that once a fence is built on the east side, if a fence is built on the east side, the brick will be hidden behind. If it's a wooden fence, you won't see the brick anyway, so you don't get much benefit from that additional brick once a fence is built. I'd rather the front that's facing Southwest 25th get as much beautification as possible.
So I agree with your general statement. I would say that, to me, breaking up the large mass helps it, just because a big solid wall of brick seems pretty heavy, and at least there's some interest in the changing of material and texture.
Does anybody want to craft a motion?
I would like to put forward a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Urban Design District Overlay Zoning Ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that, A, the applicant shall redesign the building to include a brick wainscot at the south and the east elevation, and the applicant, and B, the applicant shall obtain a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the prohibition against metal siding for exterior wall of buildings.
Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
Do we need to?
Oh, yes.
So I'd like to put forward a motion to recommend for approval to the Board of Adjustments for a variance from the prohibition against metal siding for exterior walls of buildings.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 7, there is no other business. Item 8, we have some items under administrative approval report. Is there anything that needs to be discussed on those?
No, it's been a pretty slow month.
Quiet. Comments from planning department staff?
So we will have an August meeting.
Sounds like it. Comments from commission members?
I know I've asked this question before, but has anything changed in terms of the mechanism for code enforcement with regard to properties that are consistently broken windows, things like that, to where things can get done about it?
No, there's still a process. There's still property maintenance that you can call in through Action Center.
Okay.
And unsecured buildings, dilapidated buildings. Nothing in that process, I believe, has changed.
It's all still the same, okay.
In a while, yeah. So if there's a building or property that's catching your attention, you might be thinking, oh, someone else has called it in. It's possible they haven't.
And I've called it in before, and I know others have. It's been steadily deteriorating for 10 years now. And there's broken windows. I passed it this morning. The reason I'm asking, I passed it this morning, and literally weeds are as tall as me in the front yard. But
Yeah, give me the address after the meeting.
So if paint's falling off a building, I can call this number? Is that the case?
Yeah, I don't know how much paint can be left to peel, but there's property maintenance guidelines.
Yeah, we just have to look and see what it says, but there is exterior maintenance required.
So could that also apply to artificial turf? Is there a mechanism to where you can say it's frayed or if it's got weeds growing through it, you should be able to call and report the weeds just like you would.
You can have weeds in your lawn,
right?
In your natural lawn, so you can't call someone in for weeds.
But I could see
unless they're 18 inches out.
That if you don't take care of, say, AstroTurf, hypothetically speaking, it could get frayed, it could get matted, and is there a mechanism? And I'm trying to compare this to paint or something else that would be on a building that we could reference in order to establish not just the quality benchmarks today, but moving forward.
Right. I'm not sure. I'd have to see how that reads, if that would include that. But you could also make that a part of your motion, that it be maintained. I mean, it may be hard to enforce, but you could put that in your motion that it be maintained, and if not, then they could be cited under the CA.
I'm still a little bit confused on, I know kind of brought it up, but you don't grass, all these things. I don't think you need an additional permit on a typical lot to do this. In this instance, I don't know how this is defined or even the same by any. I don't know why this, or it wasn't even administrative approval because it was, I don't know, such a small portion of the site that not even 20%. I'm a little bit lost on this conversation.
It did meet the threshold for administrative approval, and we shouldn't even be talking about this beyond this comment because the applicant's not here. It did meet the threshold for administrative approval. Staff can only approve things that we have explicit guidelines for, and things that require discretion beyond that have to be brought to the committee.
So general question, not specific to this particular case. But if in my yard I plant a beautiful tree that grows and the Bermuda dies and I put in fescue, would I have to come in front of this commission? Because it's a different type of...
No. And, well, I also think staff distinguishes between, we place a little, things that are in the right of way need a higher level of scrutiny than things that are in people's flower beds and people's yards, because the property that's sought to put in the right-of-way, it is in their backyard. But I don't care. You can't see it from the street. It's their backyard. Whatever they want to do is whatever they want to do. Is that? But in the public right-of-way, I just think we need to consider it. I'm not going to approve something that we don't have explicit guidelines for.
Something to discuss next month. Yeah. If there are no other comments, we are adjourned.